Kia ora. Kia ora, are you all there? Hello. Hello. Welcome back to the salon. How are you all going, whānau? Here we are. Another week. Political Cutz. ZB Talkback. Welcome to everybody. Hope you're all well. What can I say? Been another big week, hasn't it? It's kind of times we live in, really. Far out. Don't know what to say. World's melting down. Stuff to talk about in the country. It's all go. Got an awesome show lined up today. Got a very political artist on today, Tao Wells. Looking forward to that. Undoubtedly it'll be a wild conversation, but come to that in a moment. First of all, any of you that joined in don't even know what the heck this is, might be first time in here, who knows? I'm Jason. This is Political Cutz, ZB Talkback. That's it. Give us a like and a love. That's it. Give us a like, a love, a share, anything really. Just so we can help build our audience. You know, all those like Facebook algorithms and stuff like that. They love it when there's like comments and stuff like that there. So don't be shy. Anyway, welcome to anybody that's never come to this before. In case you don't know what it's all about, Political Cutz is a public art project. Started in 2014 in the lead up to that election. That was a wild election actually. When I look back on it, that was the one with Kim.com and there was where John Key got back in and all of that. There was the tapes and there was all sorts of crazy stuff going on. It was pretty interesting times. Dirty politics, I remember that. Todd, just saying, mate. Todd, just saying. Hey, but Political Cutz anyway, it's a public art project. I'm a professional hairdresser, and basically the idea behind Political Cutz is to make theatricality out of what I do and to encourage great conversations, political conversations. And an election is always a great time, isn't it? Or leading up to one, because people are thinking politically. And so we open up public salons, pop-up salons, offer free haircuts in exchange for political conversations. There's a lot of theatre kind of wrapped around it. My good friends at Barbarian Productions, Joe and Thomas, they were right at the heart of getting things started for us. Always got to give a nod out to them. Had Thomas last week as our business expert. Wasn't he awesome? Love tea. Lots of wise and insightful things from an artist talking about business. Love it. Had somebody over the week say, "Oi, heard the end of your thing, heard your business going, not too sure about that there." Maybe he was a bit woolly for them or something like that. He's not as woolly now because I gave him a haircut over the week. Anyway, always great. All about giving voices to artists. So Political Cutz ZB that you've come in on here, Political Cutz ZB Talkback, is basically our response or my response to the COVID situation. Very interesting situation. Hard-working man I am. First time in my life I ever stopped working. 8 weeks, as we all know, lockdown. And this is what I came up with. Partly inspired by the crapness of the blimmin' talkback that we got in the nation anyway. You know, ZB and magic talk. I don't know, what's all of that about? Why is the only talkback like dedicated to conservative views, to slightly right-wing views? Why, only giving voices to kind of contrarianism and stuff like that there. So a little bit out of response for that. Wanted to present an alternative voice. Fascinated by live streaming, the whole culture of it. I mean, for anybody that's probably 25 and younger, it's a really like normal way to kind of view your stuff. You might go on YouTube or Twitch. There's a platform worth talking about. Great story about a New Zealand artist on there, but anyway, that's a whole other story. So this is all about like trying to have alternative conversations, and we've got an election coming up, so it's important that we start chatting. Always big things, elections, but big topics around this one. We've got the current situation, so what are we actually looking for in terms of our leadership going forward? I don't know, like people can agree or disagree, don't really care, but I think we've had pretty good leadership by the main to guide us through here. I don't know, like maybe people are going to vote for the alternative though. Maybe that's not the people that they want carrying on forward. So election time, always happy to hear your views. That's what it's about anyway. Political Cutz ZB. It's all about like those, and then giving voice. We're an arts-based practice, so it's giving voice to artists. Thoughts about artists. We've had plenty on here that we've interviewed over time, but also I love getting artists on just to kind of comment about different parts of society. You know, a regular for mine now has been artists talk about sport. Love that one. Still remember, last week we had Stephen Templar doing his Ewan Chatfield poetry. Thought that was pretty cool. But remember, Bex Coogan the other week was on here talking about the mating ritual that rugby basically is. You can see my little assistant, pink-haired assistant, little pink outfit over here. She'll be on the board, Miss Ford. There you go. There's the lovely Linda, producer and assistant. Yeah, there you are on this side there. Anyway, what else is it about? It's about comment, and we want to hear from you guys. So I got my little, if you just let me click this, look, there it is. You can ring, text, comment, message. There's the number. Feel free to do it. I know most people, it's fascinating this, and look, it's cool that people don't ring up. That's fine, you know. But comment, don't be afraid to comment. Maybe you just want to say hi or something like that there. I don't mind. Gotten a bit better at reading those comments and bringing them into the show. But also, if you want to ring up at any stage of the show, don't hesitate. There's the number there. Quite open about that there. Happy to have a discussion. Not necessarily doing the free haircuts at the moment. So I've been talking about anybody that's been following me. I have been talking a bit about trying to set up some live streaming outside of here with, like, you know, cameras and mics and all of that. Boy, I tell you what, that's actually proving to be harder to set up than what I ever imagined. In the meantime, look, my hair's growing. So, like I like to, just at the beginning, because I am a professional hairdresser when I'm not doing this, I go into the salon and look after people all the time. So, a little comment about the salon. Here's a little hairdressing life. People, so there's a general consensus that, and it's women that colour their hair generally. There's a general consensus that women are maybe not necessarily looking to cover grey as readily as what they were in the past. So there's a whole new kind of technique of colouring that's come about, and I'm fascinated by this. I do a lot of hair colouring as well as cutting, but making people's hair look like mine. People want to forget it. Now that might sound like a simple thing, but that's actually really difficult. Bleaching, toning. So this is a topic. Are people, you know, like, and I'd love to hear if anybody out there, like, pandemic was a chance for people to, like, not be at the hairdresser, let their colour grow out a little bit, and a few people have decided that they're not going to carry it on. So maybe there's some comment about that there. It's very interesting. People are maybe doing it a little bit earlier in their lives. Generally, women, I find in my professional life, would be waiting until retirement. But, you know, I think this is really healthy. Maybe it's a sign that in our culture, women aren't necessarily feeling the pressure to have to colour their hair, because that's the unspoken rule about it all, is that they have to. My clientele is pretty professional, and certainly in the professional world, there's almost that unspoken expectation that you'll have your colour done, a nice neat haircut, you probably blow wave it and everything. You know, there was a classic, one of my favourite moments throughout pandemic was, you know, some bloke came on and moaned about Jacinda having waves one day and straightening it the next, and then it was up off her face the next. You know, he was like, what is this? I bet she's bullshitting this. There's a bloody hairdresser in a bubble and all of that there. She just got up and did her hair like hundreds, thousands of women do every morning, because that's the expectation. So maybe we're reaching a point in time where that expectation is leaving us. Always think it's ironic too that blokes can turn up with ill-fitting suits, no makeup, sometimes not even a shave, bad haircuts, boring haircuts, and then apparently that's acceptable. Anyway, whatever. So there you go, there's my little hairdressing thing. Had quite a few talks with clients about colours, so that's just nod to my hairdressing world, which I'd love to actually explore that. So any hairdressers out there, love you to comment on that there. Got a few people here. Mullet lives. John, hope you're good, mate. If you're listening in, and obviously you are, might give you a text after this, might see you down at the pub for one. Mark Harvey, Mark, awesome. One of my favourite artists in New Zealand, actually. Performance artist, Auckland University. I think you might want to correct me there, Mark. How do you think the governing coalition is addressing inequality and poverty? What do you think about the Greens' new plan to address poverty? Far out, Mark. I could spend the whole show on that. Hey, let's not address it. Probably this is going to tie in. This is a very good question, because it probably ties in a little bit. I feel like today, inspired a bit by Tao, who I'm going to get on in 10 minutes or something like that there. He's an artist who likes to question power structure, our power structures, our governments and what have you, and it led me to think, like, are we at a point where capitalism is creaking? There's big themes there, you know. I'm going to ask some of this of Tao later. Generally, I would say that they fail in that, Mark, because at the end of the day, all our governments these days are playing within a small frame of, well, it's capitalism, isn't it? So what is this thing? I put this up on the title, capitalism is dead, or is it even going to, is it on its way out or something like that there? So what does that even mean? Maybe some of you looked at the title and you didn't even really know what the heck I was going on about. Which is interesting, I looked up capitalism just to see what the official word of it was. It says that the definition of capitalism is an economic system in which the means of production and distribution are privately and corporately owned and the operations are funded by profits. An example of capitalism, this is awful, is the prison system in the United States, which is owned and run by private companies. Now that's kind of gross, isn't it? Anyway, that's the definition of capitalism. So that's what we're in. Here we go, Jane. Hey, Jane, thanks for joining me. Jane's a wonderful artist. I've never met Jane, but there's connections there between people we know. Nice to see your face and steady your bumming. Yeah, cheers, Jane. Thanks. That was pre-COVID bum. I've always meant to put up my post-COVID bum because I got quite fit. Anyway, enough of that there. Yeah, cool. Hey, so anyway, we've got this big thing, hey? And for us here in New Zealand, in the 1980s, that was a real point for us. The kind of the Labour government, the Longy government. Poor old Longy, I quite like Longy. I don't think he necessarily meant to be tied up with Mad Dog Preble and Rogernomics and all of that there. In fact, I saw there's a video I'm going to play soon that mentions our artist by Roger Douglas. I thought that was classic. But they brought in their, their 1984 government and then followed on by the national government that followed them on, really cemented this whole kind of capitalist, neoliberalist way that we run. And it's all about small taxes, small government, low flat taxes. We hardly pay anything. Everything's given out to the market. User pays. Remember all of that kind of stuff, eh? That was going on. So this is what's kind of encapsulating us these days. And obviously as a society, what we see is that there is these massive inequalities. I mean, it's talked about a lot, isn't it? It's nothing new that I'm talking about here. But massive inequalities. So how are we going to address this? What are we going to address it? I mean, that's a great question. Mark, straight off the top. And I totally agree. I mean, I personally myself, and I've talked about the fact that I don't ultimately support the major parties because I think they play within that small frame. So anyway, that's just my point of view. But, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts of it? Do you understand what it means? Is it a bad word? Is that a bad thing? Is it bad that we necessarily look at a system? Is it bad? I mean, I've just come out and said maybe I don't think it is good, but do we want a system where we're paying high taxes, but, the things around us are getting looked after? Our prisons, our hospital, our education, whatever it might be. How do you feel about that there? I don't know. Do we have an appetite to change it? This is big systemic change. Do we have that appetite? One of the things that fascinates me in governments is in that time, in the 1980s, and I'd love to talk about this more with the right people that kind of understand these things, but even down to how our government is run, there were rule changes made to our Public Finance Act, Reserve Bank Act, even down to local government and how that was. And they were all acts that were done with legislation that's within this kind of capitalist framework. Can we change that there? Do we have do as a society, do we really have the appetite to make that kind of change? Because it's huge. And then what are those alternatives? Anybody that dares speaks against it is called a communist. I mean, I've had to have discussions with people that support the National Party that tell me that apparently we're living under the worst communist ruler since Stalin himself. Because, Jacinda dares to talk in socialist kind of terms. Well, I think that's extreme. I don't think that that's right. But anyway, maybe you've got a different view, and I'm more than happy to hear that there and for it to be shared. And as I explained it, but what does the word capitalism mean to you? What does it bring? That was today's question I had. Look, there it is on the screen. What does the word capitalism mean to you? Ring me up and let me know. Text me. Somebody's texted me. Sophie, you're a good one. I'll have a look in a minute while I'm chatting away. I'll have a look and see what Sophie's got to say. But just a couple of things, just because before we ring Tao, I just want to get into this here a little bit, just to think about the week that's been since I was last here. The first thing, just on a political thing, I thought it was really interesting this week. David Clark went, didn't he? finally got rid of him. And there's a great example of like, I suppose, what would you call it? Political capital. You know, Labour Party, Jacinda, whatever it was, they decided during lockdown when he broke his own like health ministry rules, just to point that out, that he wasn't going to get sacked. And you know, there was a bit of cool commentary around that why do we have to have this culture of just sacking people all the time? And I think that's a fair enough question. But what you see is that this guy wasn't on the ball, he wasn't making good judgment, and that's kind of carried on, hasn't it? You know, like, I think we all agree that, you know, from what it looks like from the outside, Director General Ashley Bloomfield, you know, he's done a pretty good job of taking the nation along and dealing with this. Yes, there's been hiccups. Nobody's been perfect around the world. But, you know, boy, didn't old Clark get thrown under the bus? And I think we talked about this last week, you know, where he dares make disparaging remarks about Ash. Anyway, gone out of here. That's it. And you know, that had to happen. You'd have to say that had to happen before the election. He became the weak link. The other story of the week, and look, not a person I'm a fan of at all, but I thought that the style in which she did it was actually outstanding, and that was Paula Bennett saying goodbye to us, politically at least. But I saw the video with Tom Sainsbury, where he does this wonderful piss take of her, and then she jumps in the last 30 seconds. And look, say what you like about the woman politically or whatever, personally, anything. I just thought that was great self-deprecating humour that you don't really ever see from many other politicians at all anywhere. So, you know, cheers to her for that there. I love how she's like, you know, out in the media now, and she's like, it just about got physical, like the hatred towards me and stuff. Anyway, they were the two main big kind of stories, I suppose, of this political week in New Zealand. Thinking forward to the election, and I need to spend some time encouraging comment about this, but we can't forget we've got these two referenda, and nobody's really talking a heck of a lot about it. It makes me a little bit nervous. But anyway, I'm happy if you want to talk about it here. Now, just got a couple of messages. I'll just go back. Hang on, Mark and Jane got me busy here. Hey, the rich need to pay a lot more tax. Oh, yeah, this is Mark. You'll be the Greens policy. That was a big announcement this week on a wealth tax, so it can cover our social services at livable levels. Free education at all levels and massive free state housing for all. Yeah, no, fair enough, Mark. And subsidising haircuts is a good idea too. Mate, I'll go with that. Awesome. I'm down with that. We could be like full North Korean styles, and there's only 37 haircuts you can have. Which one do you want? 1 or 37, or the ones in between? That'll be fun. Everyone needs to set themselves free through being a sovereign. Hey, this is cool, Jane. Our birth cert is actually our death cert. If you're a sovereign, you don't have to pay tax and lots of other bonuses. Look it up on your straw man. That's cool, Jane. Put a link up. Put a link up on the comments and lead us to that. Sounds fascinating. Can't say I know those concepts, but I like it. Anyway, going to carry on because we've got to get through to Tao. What else did I have lined up before I got hold of him? Oh yeah, so this is beautiful, because actually one of the things I wanted to talk about then, following on, you know, we often look at communism as kind of the extreme opposite of capitalism, isn't it? But this is a story that caught my eye earlier in the week, and it's very much to do with pandemic. Basically, a country out there that declared itself communist in the 60s and has then become utterly shuttered away from the world, Cuba. Well, what can we say about this place? Here we go. A lot of people don't realise they've got, I think, the world's most extensive nationwide organic farming, and that basically came about almost by no choice, because they couldn't trade with the big agricultural companies, you know, whether it be like seeds or whether it be fertilizers or anything. So we're forced back 30 or 40 years ago to become organic, and now their country is. Isn't that beautiful? They've got free education, free healthcare, like Mark's talking about. Not that necessarily we're talking about turning into a communist state, but they have all of these things for their society. And although they don't have the flash cars, the modern cars and all of that kind of thing, you know, they've got a lot of other benefits in their life. Anyway, one of the great things that a lot of people don't know about Cuba is that it's got an outstanding health system, and it's got amazing nurses and doctors as part of that. They're well trained and everything. Turns out that Cuba, and they do this a lot, they are not a rich country, so they can never give money for disasters or anything like that, but they can give their professionals. And so it turns out that Cuba has been sending their doctors and nurses around the world to help with systems to help cope with coronavirus. Who knew that? Never talk about that on the bloody normal news, do they, or anything like that there. So I think that's beautiful, and that's an example of like how the world can work, isn't it? You know, that we're all in this together, that we're all trying to help each other out. If one country's got expertise, then go off and help. I think that is, when I saw that, it knocked my socks off a little bit. I wasn't surprised because I've read enough about Cuba and understand its health systems and so forth. You know, like I remember it brought back a story when the Hurricane Katrina happened in the States. Cuba was the first international country that responded to America by offering them medical professionals straight away, straight across the water, you know, there in bloody 10 minutes or something like that there. United States never gave them an answer. Well, boo them, I say. So awesome, Cuba, there you go. Rejected capitalism, you know, been pariahed by the West. United States hate them. Anybody in the media only ever like reports them as looking like fools, and little do you know that this is what's going on. Now got Barry. Hey Barry, I'm not sure, Barry, I've heard about, we've never met, but we kind of have mutual people. We don't know if Clark was thrown under the bus on COVID day number 1. Yeah, possibly, mate, possibly. Clark, who knows? Anyways, yesterday's man now. Getting close here. I hope you're out there listening, Tao. I'm going to call you very soon. So Tao, anyway, all of this here, why I'm even talking about it all and talking about these themes is that it is inspired a bit by Tao, and I don't know Tao well. I know of his work. I see him online. He really thinks in big themes. He's vehemently anti-capitalist. Well, I think he is, but maybe he's going to put me right about that there. He's an artist. Well, gosh, how would I explain him? Well, actually, I should probably go to the words that were on his thing. What do they say about him? What has he got? Well, I'll tell you this. This was his little introduction. Yeah, I can be a tad grumpy, but I've been exiled, man. So fuck it. They rain on me. I push back and take the blame. Not a Christian, so can't be martyred. Aren't those cool words? That was Tao over the week to me. I thought, good on you, buddy. So he doesn't mind pushing against the system. He asks hard questions. He goes into bat for his side. I love it. He's quite an out there character. And I've never really had a chat to him. The other night we had a brief one. I don't know where this interview is going to go, but I thought it would be awesome. And I thought it would be a great one to bring to my audience. As you know, like this whole show is all about looking at politics differently. And so that's what we're looking for here. And artistic voices. So Tao kind of like, he's all of that, isn't he? So we're going to get him on really soon. I'm going to ring him. But I'm just going to play a short little clip, like I'm prone to do. Which is actually work, and this is how I first got introduced to Tao. And this will all link back to something else I'm talking about soon. But as part of a letting space project, one of the early ones, he set up a unemployment beneficiary office, a fake one, and he did it on a random office block. It was like the Dole office. I went up there. It was a cool installation, bit kooky and out there, but real cool, making strong social comment. Anyway, boy, did he rile up some people. So I'm just the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go in and I'm gonna play this little clip for you all. If you just give me a sec, I'm just gonna turn my internet on now. Who remembers this chap? I can't even remember his name actually. Well, it's something like Eric Young or something like that there. I don't know if he's about. Anyway, I'm gonna shush and I'm just gonna let this play and have a listen to this.
Wellington artist has defended receiving thousands of dollars in taxpayer funding to promote unemployment as a valid lifestyle. Tao Wells' exhibition is being staged with $3,500 of funding from Creative New Zealand. The funding body says the idea is to prompt debate. The politicians have slammed it as a waste of taxpayers' money.
This is the beneficiary's office. It's where artist Tao Wells will be based for the next 2 weeks, advocating the opportunities and benefits of unemployment.
I believe that the true artists of our times are the politicians and the PR companies and the lobby groups that are creating the frames for how we interpret reality.
The 37-year-old says this is conceptual artwork, marketing the idea of unemployment as a valid lifestyle, hoping to spark debate about whether an advanced society would see us work less.
We're hoping to get people involved in the direction of society. Nothing less than that.
But what's angered many is the $3,500 of public money Wells received from Creative New Zealand for the project.
You actually have to ask the question, frankly, should Creative New Zealand actually exist if this is what they do?
Creative New Zealand says the aim of this piece is to generate discussions around social issues and art. The curator of the exhibit says it's worth every cent.
This is the project in itself, really. Tao has set this up in order to create reaction, and no, the project's only really just begun.
However, the acting social development minister isn't convinced.
Well, I think he's obviously a very creative chap, and if only he'd put the same effort and energy into his CV, then he probably wouldn't have a problem.
Ryan Boswell, Prime News.
Everybody, I love that there. There's Tao, the man, that's what he's all about. He even got like old woman, the crazy man himself. What did we decide? Was it Roger Douglas or, I can't remember, Tao. Who was it?
Are you talking about whether Roger Douglas is on my clip?
Yeah, that's Roger Douglas, eh?
Yeah, he's on.
Mate, you're a star getting that lot out. You know you've really hit the big time. Anyway, welcome to you, my man. You're live on air. Welcome to you.
Oh, kia ora.
How you doing?
Fine and dandy.
So listen, Tao, just for anybody that's listening, just give us a brief little, like, who are you? How did you get into this arts gig? Like, you know, what's it all about? How did it all start out?
It all started with haircuts, my hair. I've got curly hair, and as you probably know, it can create a bit of a problem for hairdressers. Maybe it's different these days, but in my day they used to like wet my hair and then comb it out and then cut it, and then it would dry into these I don't know, creations, like pretty strange creations. But I always used to wear them with pride because my hairdresser, he was a bit different, and I liked him. He was really cool. And I went to a all-boys school that wasn't really into like fashion and things like that, but I was quite into fashion. I was a surfer, and it was only rugby really in Taranaki, New Plymouth, when I was a teenager. But then all of a sudden the surfing scene took off, and they had fashion shows. And fuck me, man, that was so much better than a rugby club. It was like, whoa, beautiful people, good music, fun times. Yeah, I like this. And I have these crazy haircuts, and so I kind of stood out. I kind of took a bit of flack, having just a naturally occurring thing like hair. So that was just, that's just like an insight into
Did that open, mate? Did those haircuts and those fashion shows open up a whole new brave world for you?
Yeah, in a way. Well, I'm also an American, so. I came here as a young child, and I went back a lot of times. A lot of my family's still over there, my extended family, and my parents. I see them as great artists. They're radical artists. They're professionals. They worked in the system. They're town planners and a nurse, and they did some amazing artworks that they probably wouldn't. I think they do think of them as art, but I definitely thought of them as art, and I've always been inspired by their selfless actions, and I've tried to carry that out in my own life. I had that going on as well at home.
Yeah, that's real cool. What was your actual journey to kind of art school as such?
Yeah, well, that back in the 89 is when I had to make the decision, and a few years before that, because I grew up, even though I was like a middle class American, I grew up in a working class environment in New Plymouth, and I don't even know what that was at the time. But so all my friends suddenly didn't come back to school after fifth form. I was like the last person standing, and I looked around, like, where is everyone? I didn't realize that we would be set off on this different journey because of our, cultures, essentially, economic cultures. And so, I was like, well, fuck, what am I going to do? And at that point, as a surfer, it supported my habit, which was pretty intense. I'd be surfing 3 times a day every day.
It's right.
School, no school. I had many jobs. I worked at the supermarket. I was a milk boy, a paper boy. I even worked in I had lots and lots of jobs, and because you need a lot of money. Because surfing was really expensive, even though the sport itself is free. The equipment is expensive. So, I thought I had a taste of like corporate culture that was really coming in the early 90s through the supermarket industry, where I was suddenly given this education of, it was called Share a Smile, and it was all about you seducing the customer with bullshit so that they would keep coming back to your particular store. And I was really offended by this because I was really proud to have a relationship with a customer because of the quality of what we were selling. But then I became the longer I stayed there, the more I realized that that would change depending on just what was available, and often we were forced to sell below standard product with that same smile.
Typical capitalism, mate.
Yeah,
Typical
mate. Well,
capitalism,
I was 18.
mate.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, bro. I'm talking over top. But yeah, I was a 17 or 18-year-old kid going, whoa, here's the future. And then I remember some guy coming in to talk to us prefects, our final year students, and he sat us down like we were like he was our father. And he said to us, the future's changed. There's no such thing as what do they call it? Loyalty. They said there's a classic line. You'll probably have heard it. You'll have 5 or 6 different careers in your lifetime.
Yeah.
And so this whole idea that there are any principles or ideas is gone out the window. You're just supposed to serve yourself and get the pleasure while you can. But while he was selling that idea, he was also saying there is this one system here that actually will recognize your genius and reward you properly, and that's the corporate capitalist. They didn't call it capitalist, they just called it corporate blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wow, okay, so I could either do that or go to art school.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you know,
So
Tao, I can actually say to you almost the same story. I can distinctly remember as well, we're obviously a similar age because it was similar time, but I can distinctly remember, I think for us it was just our principal, but he was like, unless you all go to business school, you're all buggered in life. You may as well give up, basically. Do you know? And I remember at that point thinking, what is this guy on about? Interesting time, eh?
Yeah, well, I remember not only that speech, but an earlier speech where New Zealand was told, and it hit the bone for some reason, that we were not going to survive in the global economy. We didn't have anything to offer unless we just bowed down and sucked, the empire's discretion. I was just, as an American who was kind of secretly studying this colonizing culture of New Zealand. I was like, whoa, that's some serious propaganda that's really working. Because, you see the whole Rogernomic thing.
Yeah.
One day, David Longey's like, I'm going to, fight the white knights of the round table to my dying breath. And literally the next sentence, I give up.
Yeah.
What the fuck happened there?
Yeah.
And
we could have a whole show on that whole Longey thing, eh? I mean, probably a bit like you, because he was such a big figure in my kind of young history, and I'm always fascinated. He himself came across at least as a genuine, decent bloke, but shit, his government really sold us up the river, didn't he? I'd love to know more about that. But hey, listen, mate, what just to kind of keep things moving on. So, art school, where were you, and what were the appeals of that? What did you find there?
Fuck, we We got time. I'll do a short version, as short as I can.
Yeah, not an 11-hour one, mate.
Well, I do want to write a book, so I just won't get around to it. So I'll tell you what I can. Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. Like, I worked my ass off to get in. But that was fun, of course. You know, art's fun to do, but it's always like it's kind of, I don't know, it's risky. You know, like you invest your time and effort and energy into something, and then you don't know if there's going to be anyone even going to notice, or B, it's going to lead to some kind of income.
Yeah.
So, arriving at art school, you know, for me, the quintessential experience was for the first 3 weeks, we felt like we'd made it. You know, like we'd finally found a community that was, you know, wanting us to use our creativity to engage with the community and lift it up. You know, to fight against oppressive forces, whatever those are. You know, being a little bit naive at that point, but a little bit. But yeah, 3 weeks in, they finally said to us, right, look at the person next to you. That's your competition. We're going to cull every third person.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, I didn't find a place at art school. It was like a guild system. I ended up in Christchurch, Canterbury Art School, mainly because I was heard that was more of the intellectual school, and I was kind of very interested in debating and into ideas. And they had an excellent art theorist, Dennis Dutton, who was an American implant, who was really radical in his thorough articulation of art theories. And every week I would go along and have my mind literally blown, and then I'd try and apply the theory of that lesson to my practice, you know, and with a different, you know, theory each week. My practice very quickly just ran past the scope of how the art school was working. And I naively, well, maybe not naively, but there was this role called, what do they call it? The student representative. Do you ever heard of that kind of thing? The class student representative. I think it's a student union thing where they kind of see the democracy kind of tangent within this capitalist production that art school actually was. I mean, it was brutal capitalism. It's just, you know, you're a factory, churn out the commodities. Don't question, don't bite the hand that feeds, etc., etc. But like as a student representative, I was put in this really weird position by the class. I think I was in year 3 or something, and the class basically never saw the tutors. The tutors just never were around. They just didn't teach us anything. And when they did, because I was in the photography department, when they did teach us something, it was like from the 60s or something. There was this idea of photography still being this black and white truth medium that needed to be under glass and vacuum packed, and it was absolutely diluted, you know, because it was basically, it was at the beginning of the digital era, and, you know, photography had rapidly changed. It became a far more broader tool than this antiquated artifact in the frame. So this class asked me to challenge the hierarchy, to go to the head of the school and say, hey, you know, we're not happy. We're not happy, A, not seeing the tutors, and B, what they're actually teaching us. This just seems irrelevant. You know, nowhere near cool or contemporary. And yeah, it was pretty blatant, obvious criticism. So I went along and delivered the speech, and lo and behold, there was some backlash. There was a little bit of repercussions from that.
Was that one of those cases, mate, where, you know, you were kind of encouraged to go speak up, and then, you know, maybe a few people that had been behind you speaking up when there was a backlash to that kind of ran and hid away from it?
Dude, I can't remember anyone saying anything like it. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But all I remember is I was a young man at that point. I was like 19 or 20, and I remember the tutors not coming to my, we'd have to arrange meetings with them, and you'd send them a note, and they would come to you, and that would be called a crit session. But they would never come to my crit sessions for like 7 months. This went on. I was just like, what the fuck? So my response to that was to do 4 times the work. All right? So I became a filmmaker, a sculptor, a dancer, and all this other stuff. And I used photography to document it all. Right? So I did 4 times the work. I put my final submission in. It was embarrassing. There was everyone else's little glass framed black and white documentary photos of old people in graveyards. and then there was me with like half the room with my sculpture installation and it was, and I got an E.
That's great. Well, is that great? That probably wasn't great at the time, was it? What do you mean you got an E?
Yeah, bro, I got an E.
Hey, whatever happened about that then? Did they ever let you into the next year with an E?
Nothing, man. No, I got kicked out. I was gone.
So what happened from there, mate? Where did it all go to from there?
Oh, Star was born, obviously.
Excellent.
I couldn't believe it. Like, even though it hurt and I was like totally ostracized and I, lost everything, I at the same time was maybe smart enough to realize that they'd literally handed me like the coolest credentials you could ever want. I mean, I've been singled out and like removed for existing.
Yeah.
By the system. Yeah. And all I was doing is delivering class's message. But anyway, what I did is I came up with a plan, and it was a clever plan, and I implemented it perfectly, and it kicked ass. I took a while off. I think I took a year off. I started a BA, American Literature. That was another shock. I retook a class that I loved. This particular lecturer, and he was just so witty and warm, and his anecdotes were just so, vibrant and observant. And then I went to the same class the next year, and it was word for word exactly the same performance. And that kind of blew my mind. Even his like witty little side stories were like word for word. And then I just went, well, that's cool. I mean, what he was saying was still true and honest and stuff, but it was a performance. It was an act of transferring information, and I think that kind of rubbed me in a certain way of like how roles are played or not played, and so I started playing trying to play to a bigger audience, and basically I left the art school in terms of looking for their authority and approval. And I went straight to the public, and I just said, well, you decide if I'm an artist or not, or this is worthy of art, the whole, debate, what that might be. Because I can see that I'm already in a role with the powers that be, the governing standards. I've already been handed a role, which is basically invisibility, fuck off.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was like, wow, I'm threatening them.
Yeah.
By existing. I'm threatening them. They feel weak around me. So weak that they have to attack me before I've, said anything offensive. Yeah.
Very interesting, mate. And I can see a very strong thread here going from those moments through to certainly the work that I seem to be familiar with you, and it certainly is about challenging power and systems and what have you. Can I just move this to the side a little bit? What are your kind of impressions then of the wider kind of art world that you find yourself in or have found yourself in New Zealand? What's your kind of impression of the New Zealand art world, if that's a fair question?
Oh, it's a lovely question. Yeah. It's a community for a start, and I definitely see myself as a member of it. It is a complex and diverse scene as it should be. Well, from my point of view, it is. But at the end of the day, and this is where it gets difficult for me, but it's something I've decided to actually take on or just accept, because it's just honest. It's just how it actually is that it's all capitalist. And unfortunately, all my heroes, even the great artists, were capitalists. I mean, they say Picasso was a card-carrying communist, but he's not. In his latest retrospective, they excuse me, I'm stuttering like a nervous.
No, you're doing real well, mate.
But they deleted that whole aspect from his narrative. So for me, what's become interesting is the economics. Art is the appearance of something and the economics behind that, which of course is political. So does New Zealand art engage with that kind of material? Well, before I did the beneficiaries office, and this is a fact, okay, before I did the beneficiaries office, I decided to actively try and push. I wanted to be an avant-garde artist. I didn't believe that avant-garde was limited just to modernism. I thought that was ridiculous. Modernism, postmodernism, etc. These are all simultaneously existing events. They're fields of theory that you can engage with or not. So as an avant-garde artist, I was interested in being the bad boy of New Zealand art, to just exist, just to have a reflection of what was going on by the power, by the people who were basically employed, at universities or by culture, to uphold certain standards and keep out others. Right? I became the standard to keep out. So I was really interested in the fact that if I was going to play this role of the avant-garde artist, then I would only do it if I was invited to play the role. So from when I lost my job at teaching in a university in Wellington in 2005, because we stood up against being fucked over, we got paid out. I'm not supposed to talk about that because it's a legal court case or something. But it's a long time.
I don't have good lawyers either, mate.
Yeah, well, if they want to bring that up, I brought it up, so it's mine. But the point is that I did 30 shows from when I lost my job from 2005 to 2010 when I did the beneficiaries office. Over 30 shows. So that's performances, group shows, and solo shows that were all by invitation from the art scene. Okay, I didn't ask them; they asked me. Okay, now once I did the beneficiaries office, it stopped. Wow. So at the very point when I'm the most famous, the most powerful I've ever been, as someone who's representing a whole body of symbols and information around poverty, around untouchable stuff like welfare, suddenly I become person non gratis to the art system that was up to that point welcomed me and to play out this role as the antagonist, avant-garde bad boy. So I set them up. I said, well, you're gonna show your own culture basically by the way that you're gonna treat me, and that's what I've seen. I've been in the basic just not part of it anymore. Now, okay, there are other factors going on there. I'm old too now, so I'm not part of the young waves of hegemony that keep up capitalism and the status quo in the art scene. That's cool. But, once or twice a year I'll get contacted by radical fuckers like yourself who want to stir the pot, who want to see a different picture. And that's, boom, I can deliver it, in my sleep.
Gosh, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, do you feel like that is, I mean, institutionally, you can kind of understand that probably a little bit. I imagine the powers that be kind of, and I think of the halls of CNZ, for example, you know, after you've done your gig, or let's black mark him, but do you feel like that went deeper than even the institutions of art? Do you feel like, and I don't want to say individuals here, but, you know, the non-institutional arts crowd, I suppose, you know, if that's the case, that's cut quite deep, isn't it? What you're kind of saying there. Would I be correct? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I am. It's a difficult picture to be general in this. These are specific people. They are representing large bodies of culture.
Yeah,
but,
sure. Yeah.
I think because Creatives New Zealand actually did some damage to me for sure when they were asked, you know, about the Beneficiaries Project, and they said that they didn't have any information about it. That made me look stupid and made them look stupid.
Yeah.
You know, like, come on, you're literally the PR office for the public to engage with democracy. And this is one of the most radical, dangerous projects that's ever existed in the history of New Zealand.
Yeah.
And you're acting like you don't know about it. That's dumb. Okay, that's very unprofessional. But they can't hear that kind of criticism because I'm not supposed to exist. So, yeah.
Well, it brings in lots of interesting questions. And to be honest with you, Tao, you know, listening to you talk here, I mean, it is one of the reasons that I reached out, because, you know, you're one of the few. It fascinates me, and I consider myself kind of in the arts world, but I'm actually an outsider. And when I look into it, one of the things I look at the moment, and I think particularly at the moment where we're in such a politically and socially charged atmosphere, and I know that there'll be artists out there that'll probably jump on me a little bit saying this, but, you know, you are one of the few artists that I recognise that openly and overtly questions power. I know that artists are clever at putting these things deep into their artwork, but it always surprises me, and particularly on the streets of Wellington where I am, where it's the political capital, that there's not more art out there questioning power and institutions. It's one of the reasons why I reached out to you, because I'm fascinated by the fact that you do. And I can only, when I think about it myself, I can only think that there's a fear somewhere deep within the arts and its practitioners of not wanting to bite the hand that feeds it.
Well, just think of every Māori artist, every woman artist.
Yeah.
They're penalised, like, overtly for their just existing. So, like, you know, I've got it incredibly easy compared to just those two groups.
Yeah.
And they're, like, reasonably important.
Yeah.
I'm just some white, middle-class, you know, educated guy who's just, you know, trying to exist. But while I'm trying to exist, I'd like to try and expose the conditions of that existence.
Hey, can I just segue off a little bit?
Please.
Just interested, like, and I think about, because you're down in Dunedin, and I know that you've got a dream brokerage down there. Sorry, my dolly head just got completely smacked off the table, the poor thing. We don't usually treat our clients like that. Thank you.
Are you actually cutting right now? Like,
I wish I was. I'm actually just sitting in the spare room, to be honest with you. I've been trying to set the whole thing up so I can be cutting now. But anyway, I've crimped my own hair, Tao. While I was talking to you, I crimped my hair. It's looking good. But anyway, no, my point is, sorry, just to come back, because I know your beneficiaries office was around it. And I just think about, like, when I say the word institutions and I think of galleries and, you know, things like this here, I just, and I am segueing here, but, you know, the importance of groups like Urban Dream Brokerage, letting space, and that kind of, I guess, that commentary that they have, all that desire to take art out of those institutions and reclaim it back on the streets. Do you have any strong thoughts or feelings about that?
Yeah. Only ones that will get me in trouble, though.
It's all right, mate. Sweet as. It's all right by me.
I think the urban dream brokerage here in Dunedin has proved that with just the will and the intent to do relevant work in the public, not behind the golden frame of the public, but actually engage with the public, go to them, just proves just how irrelevant and defensive and just capitalist our public galleries and are obviously typical private galleries, but even our experimental galleries just struggle with the idea of that they're working for a public that they haven't met. They're so smug in their presentation of funding. Like, for me, that whole New Zealand on Air New Zealand funding catastrophe has been that it has refused to align itself with democracy, free speech, transparency, and economic access to democratic citizens.
Boom, mate. Like it. That's really well put, mate. Really well put. I like it.
But let's look at that. Because they don't align it, it isn't. And because it isn't, it works for capitalism. So we're just fucked by the very thing that's actually there to defend us from the exploitations of capitalism. And I'm going to drop another bomb on you. That you've probably never heard this phrase before. Probably no one here has heard this phrase before, because I certainly don't think I've ever heard it before. Let's just get to it.
Yeah.
The democratic economy.
Oh yeah, I saw you put a little message. I've got a little note here. Great, go for it. I've got a note here to ask you about that. Okay.
Oh wow, you are onto it, man.
Well, you put a little thing in there. Yeah, no, what were you gonna tell us about this?
Well, it's just, all the business, all the industry that's running off taxes, all, our collective wealth is behind a massive economy. And, I don't know, did capitalism fall over? Are airlines, are all our vital industries propped up by the government at the moment?
Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah, they are, mate.
You think they are? Me too. It certainly looks that way. It's
Yeah.
bit of a disaster for capitalist propaganda, bro. They spend like $550 billion a day. Well, I don't know what it is, but whoa, talk about shock illusion dropping and government just going, oh, actually, yeah, we'll just hold you all up, prop you all up. So, wow.
That is wow, mate. That is wow. That's big stuff, isn't it?
That's super big stuff.
Disaster capitalism?
Well, they seem to be floundered. I'm worried about the fundamentalist extremity of capitalism that will go so far as this thing called false flags. They'll create militaristic events that seem like civilian events to just create a massive profits spike. Massive profit spikes. Because we're all vulnerable. Because it feels like chaos. But it's not chaos.
Yeah.
It's just that they're not in charge. The essential worker, I think it's gone now. But I think that, those 3 weeks where the essential worker was essential, and it literally had the balance of power in their hands. The whole Marxist thing of they will one day rise up, and we'll educate them about their oppression. They were suddenly in charge. And what did they do? They couldn't do anything because they were still going. Unfortunately, the Marxists and socialists didn't get their message through. And that's because, that was one of, I think Marx made a mistake there. And I'm not trying to be arrogant about it, but there's a fundamental mistake when you are saying them and they over there are going to do the job that we're not doing ourselves. If socialism is going to work, socialists have to practice now, do it now, and make it self-evident that this is a good idea. And that's what I'm doing. I'm on welfare, and welfare is socialist. Boom. Everyone on welfare are socialists, practicing socialists. And at this moment, what capitalist industry isn't on welfare? So you're all fucking socialists. Just wake up to the democratic economy.
Oh yeah, I love it. Hey mate, your mate Roger Douglas. I found this bloody comment from him. Of all people, came out and said about a month ago. I said it here on the show because I was so stunned he said it, and I love this. There's nothing more socialist than a capitalist that's lost money. He said that.
Yeah, but that's kind of evil. That's just like saying a racist is I don't know. It's I don't know. Say it again. Maybe I misunderstood.
There's nothing more socialist than a capitalist who loses money, and it's that whole idea, Tao, of, capitalists are all about privatised profit but socialised loss ultimately. And it's exactly what you're talking about, We're too big to fall over, so you've got to bail us out. They get to keep all their bloody profits, don't they?
Yeah, bro, they get to keep the extra house.
Yeah.
The holiday. They don't have to actually pay for anything when things go wrong.
Exactly.
But the poor are always paying.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to ask you a couple of other questions now. What does the word business mean to you?
Yeah. Can I use that to segue into my next piece of propaganda?
Of course you can, mate.
Because along with the democratic economy, I have this idea that I'd like to pitch to the people of New Zealand and the rest of the world.
Your platform is here. The world is listening, mate. I've got a massive audience, eh? The world is listening.
If you don't, you deserve one.
Cheers, brother.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, who doesn't need a haircut and talk about something worthwhile than than what was on telly?
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. But yeah, so business.
Business.
Business. So I'm a type of socialist, as I said before, that doesn't believe that the revolution starts with educating those guys over there. It starts with practicing your economy and actually aligning how you actually live with the economy that you're actually practicing. And I believe, there's this thing called democracy at work. It's an American movement. It's spearheaded by Professor Wolf, who's just for me, he's such an inspiring street brawler type of theorist, economist, philosopher.
Hey, I'd love you to. Who is it? Sorry, what's his name?
Richard D. Wolf.
Richard Wolf. Yeah, gotcha. Yep, read a bit of Richard Wolf. Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, he's a good friend of people like Cornel West. And anyway, so the point is that he has this concept called democracy at work, and it's rubbing along the idea of, democracy is such a hard-on for Americans, but they don't practice it. There's a real existing physical correlation between the fact that people's votes has no correlation with what laws are created unless you're wealthy. So there's a total disconnect there that things like MMP here in New Zealand actually address and actually engage with trying to counter that effect. But so he's got this thing called democracy at work, and it's basically what it boils down to is workers' co-ops. Now, we've all heard the idea of a co-op, but there's actually 4 or 5 different types of co-ops. 4 of those 5 are capitalists. There's only one socialist co-op, and that's a workers' co-op. And basically it boils down to the people that create the profit need to democratically decide how to spend the profit.
I love them.
Yeah, it just makes sense.
Oh yeah, mate, I've been talking about them on the show, Tao. Workers' co-ops, mate,
Well, Tui's Lip Balm is the only workers' co-op that I can find.
Really? Are they a workers' co-op? Wow.
Yeah, but that's the problem, is that they don't differentiate their economy from a capitalist economy by putting it on the label. And what I'm talking about is a theory called relationship economics. So democracy at home. Okay? So I would like to see people labeling themselves as in the same way that an organic product labels itself or a cruelty-free product labels itself to actually promote its infrastructure and the way that infrastructure is environmentally sustainable, or et cetera, because in the relationship economy, it's about an individual recognizing what their base economy actually is, and it's usually, I found that it's usually with either someone or a group of something where we're exchanging time, we're exchanging energy and effort and physical money and shelter with each other in a way that's equal. Otherwise, I'm not happy. I have to create either the idea that it's equal or I have to make it equal. So like, okay, you might have the money, but I'll have the time, or I have the time and you can have the, it has to balance out in the home. And so it's about raising your consciousness about fairness and equality in your relationship, and then recognizing that creates a profit. By you sharing your wealth with each other, you create a profit and it's about, for me, this is where it relates back to business. Profit from a socialist point of view has to have an expanded meaning. It's not just a financial profit, but it could be a spiritual profit, it could be a time profit, It could be a love profit.
Yeah, lovely, mate.
It's about celebrating and vocalizing and living that profit out, and people knowing that it comes from a democratically agreed to decision. And because of that democracy being used at such a core base level of the relationship, I believe that you have the right to actually say that you have differentiated yourself from the capitalist default backdrop. And because you've been able to differentiate yourself from that capitalist default backdrop, you are no longer practicing as a capitalist. You are no longer perpetuating capitalism. If you can promote your profit and that you are a socialist in a relationship with X, Y, or Z, then boom, you're out.
It's really cool, mate. I love it. I love what you're talking about.
It's an idea, and I think what's interesting about the economy and everything about economics is it's like the church maybe 200 years ago, or religion, and it's some religion where there are priests who pretend that it's all very complicated, and then you have to be certainly educated, and you have to understand certain secret concepts before you're allowed to even comment on the stuff. And that is a total piece of headspin PR, and it works. It stops people feeling like they're allowed to even imagine their own ideas about what is an economy, what is their economy. And we have to take back the right to self-determine what those are. And luckily, capitalism, by assuming that it's the invisible backdrop to all interactions, you don't go to the supermarket and see the word capitalist written on every single product. You will occasionally come across things like co-op or things. But again, as I was saying, 4 out of 5 of those co-ops are just using that term to hook you into a capitalist enterprise. But it does show that there's a gap there in the system, and if you differentiate yourself from that system, we could actually start recognizing each other in the marketplace. You and I could go, oh shit, that motherfucker is a socialist, let's do business with that guy rather than the Coke over there,
Yeah, that's very cool, mate. I like it. Like how you brought that into you answered my business question beautifully. Hey, that was good. So now I'm gonna throw another one at you. Now I'm gonna throw you off somewhere else. I've got another one here.
Oh, yeah.
Only because this is something I like to visit on the show, and I love to talk about it. What Oh, here we go. Stephanie's saying Fonterra, for example.
Yeah, there's that they promote themselves as a co-op, but that's a capitalist co-op. Okay?
Totally.
So it's not workers deciding democratic on how to spend the
How to spend the profits.
Spend the profit, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, so anyway, mate, sorry, that was great. Cheers, Steph, for that. And that's right. I mean, I think people forget, actually, you know, despite it being a capitalist co-op, but Fonterra is actually a co-op. It's kind of interesting. Hey, listen, here's one for you. This will throw you off.
It's a share. Sorry, just to make sure that it's a shareholders co-op.
Shareholders co-op. Yeah, gotcha.
Shareholders, not beholden to the dairy farm. The dairy farm is just a slave worker, for boss man.
Yeah, for the
That's why they can't. That's why they always use to prop up the environmental argument. You always hear the farmer going, "Oh, I can't afford to protect the rivers from the cow shitting in it because I'm just a slave working for Fonterra's shareholders." You know, so that's how that breaks down, and it's important not to get confused around that. Because that's where the confusion lies. That's where someone's ripping you off.
Yeah, nice one, mate.
But you've got a real good next segue point, please. I won't interrupt.
Well, it's another word that I want you to riff on, and it's probably not one you're expecting. What does sport mean for you?
Oh, fuck, I love sport.
Oh, excellent. Go then, mate. Go on, have a range about sport.
Sport is the essential block and distract and redirect event that capitalism uses to maintain its hegemony. You know, because but I still love sport.
Yep. I know. I'm with you.
The tool where it is abuses us by saying, and you know, you can't. For me, the classic picture of this is the All Blacks, the transition from their amateur game to their professional game. And how that happened at the same point, around 3 or 4 years, that New Zealand went from, you know, a vaguely unaware socialist kind of practicing culture and economy to hard out brutal neoliberalism. Like that coup, people were murdered, killed in most other, in South American countries. There were massive wars around it. Yeah, sure. In New Zealand, our intellectuals just disappeared. There was massive resistance in our by secondary school teachers, but not our universities. They did have some success. I mean, I do consider the university when challenging sexist language in terms of like mankind to humankind, him and her, you know, making language more specific. That was a huge victory, but. That's it. That's been it. You know, they've basically rolled over in terms of capitalism and trying. They're not democratic institutions because they refuse to do the basic legal requirements that the Education Act of 1989 asks of them. So why are we giving them money? Well, that's one of the difficult questions I'm asking, and it's not comfortable. I want these places to exist, but they should the only reason they should exist is to do the dangerous principal work that they get paid the big bucks to do. They're being paid to upkeep certain standards. They're not keeping certain standards. They're just acting like capitalists.
Very much so.
And they get the capitalist bonus on top of that.
Very much so. And I think it's, you know, like talking about unis and tertiary. I mean, that's a great conversation right now because we can see, you know, with the students not being able to come in from overseas, all of a sudden those universities and tertiary educations are exposed really for what they have become. And you can see that, I feel like from the outside that they've lost their core, that they are literally just businesses looking for the buck and the profit.
That's the problem right there, though, that we've suddenly just gone, they're just businesses. But they've always been just businesses. But whose business are they? Are they the democratic economy or are they the capitalist economy? They have to choose a side. We have to be able to see the side that they're on.
Hey, mate, go back to sport.
Oh yeah. Yeah, sport, man. I watch a lot of surfing.
Oh, hey, do you love the big wave stuff? Do you watch that stuff?
That's a bit too macho for me. But the World Cup thing, where they, it was the first professional sport to offer the same prize money to men and women.
Really? Is that right?
Yeah, that's just happened. I think the last couple of years.
Wow.
So it's a filthy industry. It's super capitalist, but they've got these weird pockets of, maybe it's nostalgia of harking back to a more rebellious counterculture kind of idea.
Okay.
It's very hard to simultaneously have these, gladiator, mercenary, prostitute body sports thugs, and have the eco hippie anti-capitalist drug take.
Surfing.
But in surfing, in the sport of surfing, because there's an egalitarian quality to surfing, because you're not against another team. You're with the ocean is this like neutralizing field. It's just up to you. So, and the thing about up to you is that everyone can experience what it's like to be the elite, the top, because all you have to do is ride a wave well.
Yeah, wicked.
Anyone can do that. Like, it's spooky, but if you do it for long enough, you will have a day where you will know what it feels like to be the number one surfer in the world, because that's what the sport does. It gives you access to this incredible feeling of being in harmony with nature.
That's wicked, mate. It's real cool.
Yeah, it's sort of, I watch a bit of surfing.
No, that's cool, mate. I love how you sum that up. That's so true about a sport like. I mean, I just listened to you and I think, gosh, probably skating and skateboarding and probably maybe mountain biking or something like that. Could like there's very few that. I mean, that's a beautiful way of looking at a sport like surfing. That you ride that wave well. You're basically the champion at that moment. You feel like the champ. Hey, that's great. I love that. It's real good.
It was just that I think I riffed that idea off this old idea of the sport as the sport of kings. I think it was a Hawaiian aristocratic kind of activity. And there's something about the generosity of the Hawaiians when the sport took off, the way that they just said, okay, and they let people in. There's something that I'm channeling there, but I don't know how.
All good, mate. All good. Hey, Tao, I've loved this chat. We've kind of come to a bit of a natural end.
Man.
But I've loved it, mate. This is awesome.
Oh, good.
That was
good.
Yeah, great. And I reckon we've had it's cool. People have been listening in and commenting here, engaging in it, which is awesome. You've brought a great level of kind of intellectual thinking to my basic hairdressing show.
So humble. It's not All Blacks, mate. You're gonna have to be humble.
Hey, listen. I reckon we're going to have to get you back on again for a bit of comment. Certainly prior to the election. I'm committing to this through to the election.
Brilliant.
Every second week I like to get somebody to do a little bit of a business comment or a sports comment. So even if it's for something like that there. So look, I really appreciate you giving me your time today, Tao. And I'd say the audience have really enjoyed it. Because you've certainly brought some great thought to the conversation. So thanks very much for joining.
You're welcome.
Maybe you'd like a last word.
Oh, I don't have anything to say really about last word.
That'll be a first. Tao has nothing to say about something. What? It's crazy.
Oh, yeah, I do have an opinion on everything, but there you go. You've reminded me of something. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one. And then it's like, what? So I'm looking at your asshole.
That's a great note to finish on. Hey, last thing, I'm going to say goodbye to you and hang up. But the last thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to play that beautiful track that you sent me, the Straight Jacket Fits.
Oh, yeah, cool.
It's beautiful, mate. I loved it that you sent that through. Lovely.
It inspired me when I was a young man.
Yeah, cool. Well, they did too for me. I thought they were an amazing band.
Yeah.
And even
can
what
do
you've
it
been
here.
trying to do. Yeah, cool.
We can do great art here. Just give us a go.
Hey, you take care, Tao. Gonna say farewell. Cheers, brother.
Thanks, Jason.
Take care. Thank
See
you.
you,
Bye-bye. Wow, wasn't that something? Man, you know, someone like Tao, I mean, we could have just kept going. That was awesome, eh? What great views on stuff, you know, just to get us thinking differently. Like I said in the middle of that there, that's why I got this guy on, you know, like I look out there and you know, he's prepared to stick his neck out there, he's prepared to be brave, he's prepared to challenge. Sure, he takes a lot of stick for that. Not everybody's going to agree with what he says, but you know, that in some ways, that's what an artist really is about, isn't it? Is that there? So, what a great conversation. I love that there. What do we got? Hey, I've just tuned in. Just wanted to say I love hearing you two yarning. Thanks. Cheers. That's from Sophie. I got him to chat about UBD briefly, so that was good. Classic yarn. Yeah, cheers, Steph, and thanks for joining in. My friend Lisa. I don't know if she's still listening, but thanks. Lisa was my first ever caller on PCZB. And she only rang me up to tell me that I was in the family calendar. Love it. Cheers for listening. Hey, thanks everybody. That was awesome. I'm going to clock out kind of soon. In a moment, I guess if I think about some of the things that Tao was talking about, and some of the things that we kind of, you know, some of the things I prepared, in some ways a little bit of what he's talking about segues a bit. My last comment before I play his lovely Straight Jackets tune, which if you guys don't know of Straight Jacket Fits or haven't heard them in a long time, stay on and listen to this. We'll clock off the whole thing at the end of the song. Straight Jacket Fits, classic New Zealand band. I've always debated in my own head whether they're my absolute favourite of all time. Shane Carter, you know, Flying Nun legend, all of that there. Even the stuff he went on and did with Dimmer. Absolutely loved all of that there. But just the last thing I wanted to get into, and this is, in some ways, this is a little bit of where, you know, Tao's big kind of comments kind of goes to, but is looking at a country like the States or Britain. And it was an article that was sent to me by Dale that often tunes in here during the week. But, you know, are we watching, because of our, like, the rampant capitalism of these places, the elites, and we're looking at Anglo-American relationships here, Britain and America. These two countries, both being, for want of a better word, but leaders of the West. But, you know, you got to say both of these places in absolute dire straits at the moment. Both being run by absolute madmen, you know, who are really just part of the elite, looking after the elite. Both countries in the last 20 or 30 years have smashed their kind of systems so badly. I mean, the States doesn't even pretend to have them. You know, Medicare, everybody's its total user pays. That, you know, and people are so strung out, the cuts of Britain over time, you know, the austerity measures and what have you. Society hasn't become society. You've got to pay for yourself. It's so expensive. People can't, you know, and then in their heads, they can't even imagine sharing their wealth because they're struggling to have some themselves. Leaderships that don't care if people live or die. And now we've gotten to this point with this terrible, you know, the results of the coronavirus in those countries is just appalling, as we all see. And so this article that was sent to me, and I'm going to try and, I've never kind of done this, but I'm just going to try and, while I do this here, I'm going to try and share this. But basically, the question I'm going to ask you all, and I think this is fair enough, are we actually witnessing the downfall, not just the downfall, but of these two countries on the verge of becoming failed states? Not just like, oh, it's a bit shit there, but actually failed states. Just like the USSR collapsed. This article kind of makes some very close kind of correlations between what was happening in the USSR. You know, a leadership that was, you know, completely devoid of any connection with its population. That they just end up collapsing on themselves. And it certainly looks a little bit like that there to me. I don't know if this is, I don't think I can quite share this. So look on the stream, I'm going to post a link into this, but this is how a society dies, is basically Britain and America are textbook examples of a new gruesome phenomena. Rich nations self-destructing into poor failed states. big topic. I read it. I think of, I'm probably not as well read as somebody like Tao's been talking to us, but I certainly get the concepts. Read the stuff over. It looks like this, doesn't it? It's so sad to watch. It is so sad to watch, to see the arrogance. I didn't watch Trump, but to see the arrogance to it. This whole Mount Rushmore overnight, jets flying out. I mean, just the arrogance of this guy. Doesn't even talk about coronavirus. Millions of people infected in his country. Doesn't even go there. I mean, the arrogance is breathtaking. Boris Johnson, no different. He talks in riddles when he gets up in front of his people. I mean, what the heck is this? It's sad to watch. It's so sad. I kind of have an anxiousness within me personally as I watch this stuff, because I think, man, this is going to collapse in. Like, what is this going to mean for the world? I think the next, possibly even year, let alone like 5 years or something like that. Goodness knows. So, a bit of a sobering theme to finish on, but, I kind of had it there as a note about today, listening to Tao there as he spoke. Couldn't agree more, really. Couldn't agree more. I don't know. I don't have the answers. Don't pretend to. Love having a discussion about it. So it's been awesome today. Really enjoyed that. Glad I got him on. Definitely going to get him back. Thanks everybody for listening. Yes, that's right. The fall of the heroes. That's right. It's right, Tina. The fall of we need allies. We got to find Anglo-centric pals. I don't know where these relationships go. When you're a country like New Zealand and really, small at the bottom of the world, we've got to be brave if we're going to leap out from behind these powers and charge ourselves. Things like the UN and so forth, all those kind of, what are they meant to be? Multilateral, unilateral, I don't know, platforms for us. They're important to a nation like ours, but all of that gets forgotten about when big nations fail. So, big stuff and big stuff for us. What does it mean for us as a country? Gosh, who knows? Who knows, really? Pretty sobering stuff to finish on, eh? Anyway, great one this week. Going to play the Straight Jacket Fits. Have a listen, because it's I mean, A, they're awesome. B, it's a great track that Tao. It's one of their classics. Bad Note for a Heart comes from 1990. Looking at this week. Hang in there, team. Let's keep on the political commentary. Next week we'll come back. We'll talk a bit more about... I need to spend some time. I feel like we need to talk about the referenda coming up a bit more. Remember, we do have them. There's not much discussion going on because there's so much of everything else. So maybe we'll try and theme next week around that. We'll have political astrology back next week. Man, I don't know about you guys that are listening in, but I'm loving what Erica brings. She's got Todd Muller's star chart next week. She did Jacinda's last week. If anybody didn't catch that, go back to last week's Political Cutz Live. Go about 25 minutes in or half an hour in and you'll get Erica. She talked about Jacinda Ardern's star chart, if anybody remembers. A Leo Queen. No surprises there, really, when she told us. So look forward to hearing about Todd Muller next week and what he's got to say. At 4:30, there you go, I'm getting yelled at from upstairs. The producer, she came down, put a wig on and funny glasses, wrote on the blackboard, rubbed stuff off. Look at it all, eh? Public choose, challenging systems. You want it to be an avant-garde, new anarchic avant-garde. That's a pretty cool one to end on, new anarchic avant-garde. So keep an ear out. Give us your thoughts next week. It's been great. Look, crimped hair. Still did a bit of hairdressing. Always makes my hair look big. I quite like the big hair, so we'll rock that. I'll see how it wears over the week. If I don't get it wet, it'll stay all week. It'll be even bigger by the time I get here next Sunday. But going to clock out now with the Straight Jacket Fits. Cheers, everybody, for joining in. Really loved it. Oh, no, hang on. I have to push this button. There we go. I'll disappear down here at some stage. Where am I? If I click that button, there, I disappear. You can still hear me, but I'm going to say farewell. Cheers, everybody. Keep safe. Have a good week. And enjoy this on the way out. Straight Jacket Fits. Bad Note for a Heart.
keep it coming.